Today I want to talk about something I picked up. I grabbed a copy of this, Spelljammers for D&D 5th edition, and today I want to go over what I think is the reason Wizards of the Coast is losing money. Okay, so this video, I'm going to use a lot of content from this book here, The Captive Mind. I highly recommend reading this if you want to understand what's going on in the world today. It's truly an amazing book. This won a Nobel Prize. It's by this guy right here. You figure it out. I can't pronounce it. All right. So the thing is a lot of the stuff I'm taking comes from this book, but I see so many parallels to the world right now that we're living in. They just can't be denied. So I'm going to just jump right in here and talk about this with D&D, why I think D&D is on a certain trajectory, and why I think Wizards of the Coast, particularly the D&D branch, is losing money. And I think they're going to continue losing money unless they make some kind of course change, and I don't think they're capable of it. So the other thing that I want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about why that is, and the other thing I want to talk about is sort of the long-term effects this is going to have on D&D. How I see this affecting the game itself, and I don't think it's good. All right, so here, I'm just going to jump right into it. Now, in The Captive Mind, the author, this guy, if you can announce his name, great. I can't. So I'm not even going to bother trying. But anyway, he talks about Stalinism. He talks about the something called the New Faith, which I'm not going to go right into it because I don't know what YouTube will allow me to talk about and won't allow me to talk about. I know as far as the New Faith goes, YouTube is completely indoctrinated, so any criticism of it, I'm not sure what they'll think of that. But anyway, the New Faith is basically what Stalinism was developed around. It was actually before that, with the Bolsheviks and so forth. The New Faith was sort of the doctrine by which a certain political belief was spread throughout Russia, and then Stalin sort of moved in and took it over for his own purposes. And I would say he was more of a totalitarian than anything, but still it paved the way for it. And then he certainly exploited a lot of the stuff for it. Okay? So I'm going to be looking down because I do have notes this time because it's kind of a complicated topic. So, all right. So the thing is with the New Faith, it has a lot of very sort of strict tenets that a person, an adherent to the New Faith, is supposed to believe and follow. And so one of the big things of the New Faith, one of the big elements of it, is to create new words and to create new definitions of words and to entirely change meanings of things that we've known forever as one way, and then they may change another way. For example, we know that there are two shades, black and white, and there is a gray in between them. Well, the New Faith might say, no, there's also blue in there. Or they're not really white and black, aren't really shades, there's something else, and they'll come up with a new word for it, and they just completely change the whole meaning of it and everything. If you can follow me so far, okay? So this is called, I have to slow down here, I'm rushing. This is called neologism? Neologism. It's creating new words, new meanings for things that were long since accepted, okay? So what the New Faith does is, if you become indoctrinated in the New Faith, and let's face it, if you go to university these days, you're indoctrinated whether you want to be or not, whether you believe or not, since probably like 90% of university professors adhere to the New Faith. So even if they're not directly talking about it because it is their belief system, they're going to be teaching it to you anyway. And now it turns out like elementary schools, middle schools, all those sorts of things are absolutely rife with New Faith believers as well. Okay, so what happens with the New Faith is that you have to take on all these beliefs, and some of them may be completely ridiculous, but you are not allowed to say that. You're not allowed. You have to believe that they're true, and you have to push that forward. So what ends up happening, okay, is it takes art and it turns art into something else. So what I've talked about in the past with D&D is that I consider D&D an art form, and I consider the game mechanics and I consider the game itself sort of like a paintbrush. It's kind of a, how do you like it? It's kind of a canvas. The rules are the paint. The DM is the artist and the players are the artists, and they get to paint a world on that canvas, if you get my meaning. And I've always believed that. I've always thought a good D&D campaign has some sort of meaning behind it, has some sort of expression. It has an exploration value to it. You're exploring concepts. You're discovering why things in the past were right, why things were bad. You're discovering those things, you're learning, you're growing in a D&D game. I firmly believe that. I've had great success with my campaigns over the years by using that. In my upcoming game system, I'm definitely going to be doing that. I'm going to be exploring this world that we're in right now. Why? Because without that, art is meaningless. It becomes vacant. It becomes illustration, and it becomes propaganda. If the artist is not allowed to express themselves, then all of a sudden you don't have art. You have completely destroyed the artist, and not just the painter, but the game player and the DM. You've destroyed them. You've ruined the game for them. So the same thing goes with writers. The same thing goes with painters, illustrators, even thespians. All of them, if they cannot be true to themselves, true to their own natures, and sort of work out their problems, work out the things that they believe, that they don't believe for themselves, unfortunately you just end up with garbage, is what you end up with. You end up with something completely devoid of meaning. And so another aspect of this is like postmodernism, the idea that a medium, that the audience puts meaning into something. So if an artist creates a piece of work and somebody interprets that work negatively, then that's their right. That means that the art is negative now, and that is the artist's responsibility. Now, you can imagine the amount of fear that would put on to an artist that believed that stuff, right? Because an artist, true art, is an exploration of the inner artist. It is an exploration of the inner life of that artist, and the artists themselves won't know. Well, they don't know the meaning of their work half the time. They honestly don't. They honestly don't. I've had that experience. I've had people who actually understood and knew art look at some of my stuff, and they brought out and they interpreted stuff. They were dead on. I had no idea. I didn't know any of that, but I was definitely working it out. For me, that's what art is, and for most artists, that's what art is. If you're an illustrator, right, maybe it's not that. Right? Illustration, technical designs, you need it to, if you're designing a Chesterfield, you need the Chesterfield to look like a Chesterfield, or a couch. You need the couch to look, or a motorbike. You need the motorbike to look like a motorbike. It's technical drawings, it's illustrations. And in that wise, that isn't necessarily artistic, that's more of a practical kind of a thing. So what ends up happening, okay, is that once you have to take on these new words and start believing this new stuff, and meanings and definitions of things have been changed, and new belief systems have entered into your consciousness, what you have to do is you have to start to sort of display that you understand these things. You have to, if you like, signal to people around you that you are a true believer, that you believe all this stuff, and it's right to the core of you. You have to signal everybody that you adhere to this new faith. Look at me, I believe in the new faith. I'm one of the good ones. Don't kill me, Stalin. That's what you have to do. So what ends up happening is you end up with something called Catman. And what Catman is where you have to learn how to sort of curtail your beliefs around this new faith and around the things that you're now supposed to believe. that you're expected to believe, the new words you're supposed to use, the new meanings you're supposed to have, the new understandings that you're supposed to have. And you have to figure that out. So what happens is that the new faith abhors allegory. And that is a story that maybe has a few different meanings in it, right? And because they don't want meaning that they're not in control of. They don't want meaning. They don't want something that might color a little bit outside of the lines. So they absolutely despise allegory. So if you have new faith people making, for example, movies, then they have to make very sort of bland movies that are just, entertainment that talk about the new faith or show how the new faith is, supposed to be the answer to everything. You have to express that, but you can't have any sort of inner life of the characters. You can't have anybody that anybody can actually relate to, because that's allegory, and allegory is just simply out. And allegory is the lifeblood of the artist. That is the thing. I mean, without allegory, you have no art. What you have is propaganda. You have a list of things you have to sort of push. You can't have any inner exploration of your own soul, your own passions, your own understandings, your own insights, because if you do, then all of a sudden you might be one of the bad ones. You might be put up against the wall or sent to a gulag off in Russia, right? You might lose your job. You might lose your position. You might lose your blue check mark. You get my meaning? So, you have to be very, very careful. Now, this is an interesting thing. If you get caught out by other new faith adherents, there's no road to redemption. You're not going to redeem yourself unless you have immense value and they can just overlook it. Trudeau. But if you falter and if you show that, oops, you don't really believe this thing, or you don't really think this way, or whatever, we come back to Catman, you have to put on this face like you believe everything, but if they find one little crack, then it means that you're faking the whole thing. The whole thing, you're canceled, you're out of here, you're off to the gulag, right? Stalin will sign the piece of paper, your name's on the list, because you do not actually truly believe this. And they had true believers, or true believers, new faith adherents back then had no problems killing down hundreds and hundreds of people. They thought it was a waste of time trying to figure out which ones were actually the bad ones and which ones are the good ones, because to them, life didn't really have meaning. And so you could just wipe out entire villages. You could surround it by tanks and just starve everybody to death. And yeah, they did that, right? So it didn't matter. As long as there's one bad person in there, you could kill them all, right? It's kind of the opposite of don't allow one person, one innocent person to be found guilty about how bad that is. Well, it's sort of a flip of that, right? So you can imagine how, if you're a new faith believer, how absolutely terrifying that would be. And so you have to curb your art around your Catman. And there are different Catman. There's a professional Catman, there is a skeptical, there's a metaphysical, there's an ethical. The ethical Catman is kind of interesting. That is where good and bad lose all meaning. There's no such thing as good and bad. What there is there's pro-faith and there's anti-faith. So you say, no, this is where it comes in. Like if you're an artist and you express something that might be a little bit, shady on the old, because you don't quite understand how this or that thing is supposed to work. And someone might decide, oh, that's against the new faith. That instantly means it's evil. That instantly means it gets canceled, because that's the way of good and evil, is you're either for the good faith or for the new faith, or you're against the new faith. And if you're against the new faith, that's evil. If you're for the new faith, that's good. That's all there is. Nothing else matters. There's no other measure of good or bad. So I did a video already about that, which I thought, in which I explored the idea of good and evil as a substance, as a material thing. This is, you could drink the vial and you're instantly evil, or drop a little bit of elixir on a sword, boom, it's instantly evil. Because if you just label monsters and you just label things in a D&D game as evil with no sort of connection to what actually would make that thing evil, what that thing does that defines it as evil, basically you're just playing a murder hobo game. And, you know, that's fine if you like doing that. That's great. But that's what that is. This is a label of bad, so you can attack it. Well, the New Faith loves that. That's great, because that's completely devoid of any kind of meaning, and that's something surely all the art needs sucked right out of it is meaning, right? The New Faith adherents. So, again, I really highly recommend that book. Okay, so what I think has happened is I think that's what has happened. I think that Wizard of the Coast has hired a whole bunch of people that adhere to the New Faith. And they view freedom as kind of a burden. So the books are no longer designed to sort of make you free to express yourself, free to paint your game on a canvas, and the players, everybody gets in. It's a big mess, and you have a lot of fun. And you work stuff out, and you learn things together, and you explore the world safely in a sandbox. But you can tackle things. You can tackle inner things. You can tackle all kinds of stuff. No, my friend, you can't have that. You need a safe zone where nothing of the outside world can get in, and this is all just completely game, action, excitement. It's basically cardboard heroes, one-dimensional, that just express a certain political perspective on life, or use the new words and the new meanings. But other than that, no inner life, nothing. Just blank. What that is, that's dead. That's without art. That's without any humanity. That is just a shell. And it's not the game I fell in love with. It's just not. And I think it's not the game most people want to play. And I think if you're a New Faith adherent, and my dog's looking at me like I am completely nuts right now. I was just like, Dad, you have lost your mind. She's listening to every word, though. Yeah, she is. So, anyway, where was I? Yeah. So, if you're in a group, then you have to maintain your Catman while playing this game. You have to be really scared that somebody's going to interpret your world that you've created, the things going on, in a bad way, and if they do, that's on you as the DM, not on them. That's on you as the DM, because the DM is the artist. Not totally. I mean, it's a co-creative kind of a thing. Don't get me wrong, but the DM's going to take the heat. You're going to end up, who knows, in all kinds of trouble, right? Like, I have no idea. It's not my world. The only way I know about it, really, is just from history and other books I read. This book here, it's just amazing. I'll let you see it there. Cannot recommend it enough if you want to understand the hell we're going through and we're about to go through. So, I don't mean to be all political here. It's just that I've seen some other videos about why Wizard of the Coast is losing sales. And I just bought one of their new books. I'm taking a look at it. I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, that's why. Right? So if you're in this game, you have to take all the meaning out of the game. It has to just be a Marvel movie. And you have to virtue signal in it here and there. That's it. That's all you can do. There's no free expression. You can't even freely play the game. You can't even be yourself, right? For fear of reprisal from the other members of your faith. I don't know how you play it. And since I've heard now you're supposed to have two sessions of working out everybody's boundaries, what you're allowed to talk about, not allowed to talk about. 2 sessions of that. I've never even had 1 session of that because I played with friends and I knew them, and if I screwed up and I made a mistake, they would forgive me. But in the new faith, there's no forgiveness. There's none. There's only, aha! I knew you were faking it. I knew you were something bad, right? That's all that happens. And then once that happens, off to the gulag, man. That's the end of you. So, and somebody can't say, whoa, no. I'm just, exploring. I'm learning and living. This is part of being human. No, that's not allowed. That's not allowed. So long term, you see, in order to have a revolution, the very first thing that you need, and the new faith is all about a revolution. It's about changing everything, about changing everybody's belief systems and making everybody adopt this Catman system of existing, which is interesting because as soon as you curb all your beliefs and everything around these new words, these new beliefs and everything else, as soon as you've done that, if that's taken away, you have nothing. You're just a blank void of nothingness because you've stripped out your humanity. Because that's not what people are. People are complex. People are deep. People have problems. I love people with problems. Problems are a thing. I mean, that's part of being human, right? So you're not allowed to have any of that. And that's really dangerous. So what happens is that in the new faith, the idea is to make everybody disgusted with themselves, because that's the only way that you can create a revolution. A revolution has to be, the very first starting point of it is that you have to make everybody in a society disgusted with their society, disgusted with their past, disgusted with who they are. So you have to do things like go back and find old rule books and say, oh, that's no good. That's disgusting, and get rid of it. So what's happening is sort of Wizards of the Coast. I doubt the management knows about that, and I'll get into that in a minute. But maybe they do. They might be adherents too. I have no idea. I'm just speculating here. But what's happening is Wizards of the Coast are not only are the people making 5e disgusted with the old D&D, right? And, like Oriental Adventures, and they're canceling it. And they're editing things and putting disclaimers in the books. So not only are they disgusted with that, that means they're fomenting a revolution against the game. Think about that for a minute. So they want to change the game. They want to They want a revolution against the game. Well, what do they want to revolutionize against? Well, they want to adopt new meanings. They want to adopt new terms, new words. And they want to create sort of their paradise image of what a role-playing game would be, which means completely devoid of creativity, completely devoid of freedom, completely devoid of humanity. Anything human, gone. Any allegory, gone. That's what that means, literally. So, Wizard of the Coast, how can you make money like that? How can you make money when you despise yourself? And that's what they're doing. They despise the game they created. So I'm not surprised they're coming out with a new game called 1D&D. I can only imagine what it's going to be like, and I imagine they're going to despise it almost as soon as it's printed, as soon as they open the books. Oh, look, I made a mistake here. Because that's the whole game. That's the whole game. So long term, if the new faith really took hold, and if everybody adhered to the new faith, you wouldn't be allowed to play D&D anyway. You couldn't. You could not play with anybody. If you had the players around the table, at any time any of them get upset at you because of something you did or you said in the game as a DM, you're gone. You're off to the gulag, right? So it would be impossible to play the game anyway, which is actually the goal. The goal is to break down human interaction with each other, except in these very Catman sort of defined ways, right? So, in my opinion, the reason D&D is losing sales is because all this is reflected in the books, and who wants to buy that? Who's going to pay $80 for a propaganda book? Who's going to do it? I'm not. Well, I did by accident. But the thing is, I had to learn. So ultimately, the goal of the people who are designing this game, just through logical progress, is to completely destroy the game, and not only destroy it, but make it unplayable. And even if like I say, the new faith really took hold, you wouldn't be allowed to play. You wouldn't even be able to sell the game, because the game is just too much expression. There's too much stuff that they wouldn't be able to control. So why is this happening? Well, in my opinion, it'd be because 90% or so of schools are being taught by people who adhere to the new faith. And whether students know it or not, they get initiated into the new faith, and they have to take on Catman. And they have to protect it. They have to guard against it. So they have to put on this face. So you have writers that can't write. You have artists that can't art. You have movie actors that can't movie act. You have, basically the only movies you can have anymore are basically superhero movies, right? Where, virtue signaling is the norm. If you go off of that even slightly, you as the creator can be outed, right? And then, as we've seen, not a lot of people like going and watching propaganda movies because they're not really great, right? And that's what's happening to D&D. It's basically turning into sort of new faith propaganda with the long-term goal of completely destroying itself. And so what I think happens is that people, when they run these companies, they look and they say, hey, we need a writer. We need an author. We need some artists. Who are we going to pick? So they look around and they find people with bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and all these things. And they say, yeah, we'll hire them, right? So they hire them, not realizing that they've been thoroughly indoctrinated and they've taken on this Catman, whether they know it or not. I mean, I doubt that most people have even read this book. I doubt, because I mean, you can actually get this is mind-blowing to me, but you can get a master's degree, I think, or a PhD in English literature and not have read Shakespeare, which is just, I mean, sorry, that's just so bizarre. But if a CEO of a company knew, hey, look, this person with a master's degree in English, they're going to come and write my adventures for my game, but they've never read Shakespeare. I mean, you would, what? Because a lot of people aren't keeping up. Especially older people. Older people are usually who are the CEOs and the bosses of these things, right? They don't know. They just need people to run the businesses. And they don't understand what they're hiring. They don't understand that this new faith is this cancer that is going to absolutely destroy the thing that they built. So that's my long-term prognosis. My long-term prognosis is that D&D 5e is sort of tearing itself apart. They're revolting against themselves. They're disgusted with themselves. They want to change it over to something new. And what they change it over to, now I'm just going off of Stalinism, going off the new faith. I'm going off of what has happened in the past. Because what's happening in the past, if you read this book, you'll see it's what's happening right now. This is current. This is what's happening. And so the D&D game is a victim of it. It's getting gutted. It's, any meaning and any fun you're having in the game is probably because you found a group of friends that are forgiving, that enjoy just playing the game and just having fun. Well, just in playing the game and just having fun means expressing yourself. It means exploring yourself. It doesn't mean Catman. If you're there at the table and you're hiding in Catman, you're hiding behind this shell, right, and you're playing this D&D game, you can't enjoy it. You're not having fun at the game, right, like you could be. And I think most people, especially if you're an older player and you played the older games, the stuff. Nobody thought Oriental Adventures reflected the Orient. Nobody thought. I never thought that. I had the book. I didn't for an instant think that. I just really admired it. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to look at it. That's all. I didn't think, a ninja in the book is what a ninja's really like. Who would think that? I mean, it's ridiculous. But that's the thing. That's the thing, is that the new faith has no faith in people. They want to control everything, and they want to obliterate any humanity in it and just turn you into a cardboard cutout. This is me. I'm full of Catman. Yeah. Yeah, so that's why 5e is losing money. I predict, it might spike, it might go up and down, but I predict in the long run, if they keep this up, it's destroyed. And we're just going to have an OSR scene. Probably won't even have books being sold at all unless they sell off to some other company as Hasbro starts looking to liquidate things. Because I know the Magic scene is having a lot of trouble as well. All right, that's my video. Thank you for listening all the way through. If you made it this far, hey, good for you. And again, if you are a reader, if you can read this book, highly recommend it. It is absolutely awesome. All right, and this, I don't recommend it. All right, thanks for watching the video, and till next time, talk to you later. Take care.